Hey everybody, I'm here to talk about my 1989 Carolina Skiff J16 and what I've done to it and how I fish it and everything everything that I know about the boat that might help some other people. Right now it's in about as rough shape as it's ever been, just because it's been about 2 years since I've done any work on it, and I've fished the heck out of it, and it's taken a beating, but it's still ready to go every time I take it out. First thing I'll go over is the outboard. This is a 2016 Suzuki 20 horsepower, 4-stroke, pull start, short shaft, and it has been great. It's always had power. It's never let me down. It gets great fuel mileage. I think on an average day I'm going to get about 11 miles to the gallon, which is pretty fantastic on the water. I got a 6-gallon gas tank, so that means I can go about 60 miles, which is farther than I'm ever going to go in a day. And it's just been great. I will tell you, it's the one part of this boat that I always make sure is in tip-top shape. I always flush it out. I always get it serviced. I always change the plugs. I always change the oil. All the maintenance that needs to be done on these things, it has to be done, or you're going to wind up stranded on the water. But with that said, this one probably has about 600 hours on it, and it's been fantastic. It's going to push this boat. It's going to push this boat about 22 miles an hour with just me on it. If I put a second person on it, I'm going to be going about 16 miles an hour. And then if I put a third person on it, I'm going to be going about 9 miles an hour. So the lighter this boat is, the faster you're going to go, that's for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is my fish finder. I've got a Lowrance Hook 5 HDI, which doesn't have side scan, but it's got a lot of the other features. It's got GPS, and I've got the mapping card in there, and it's got real nice down scan, and it's a pretty good device. The only thing I would say is that it does cut out somewhere around maybe 8 or 10 miles an hour. You really lose a lot of the readings, and I've tried to put the transducer in the right spot so that that doesn't happen. And this is about as good as I can get. It's roughly even with the bottom of the boat. I've pushed it up and down a little bit, but it doesn't seem to have made much difference. Sometimes I'll click it forward a little bit, and if you do that, you might get a little better reading if you're going faster. But these Carolina skiffs are notorious for pushing a lot of wash off the back of the boat and really making these fish finders cut out if you're going at any reasonable speed. Now, as most of you probably know, these things are notorious for taking on water. There's about 4 or 6 inches of foam in here, and sometimes the integrity of the hull gets violated and you wind up with water in the hull. So the previous owner put this drain hole in the back of the boat, and I get some water. I probably get a cup of water in there that's going to come out every time I take the boat out. Don't think there's a lot that I can do about it. I've tried to seal it up a couple times, and at this point I've basically just given up, and I've learned to live with it. For the bow line, which also doubles as the anchor line, I've got about 50 feet tied to the front of the boat, and when I move the boat around, I just strap it around the cleats and send it on my way. I'm gonna have a stainless steel clip on the end, and when I ever need to anchor the boat up, I'm gonna just hook the anchor onto there, and then I'll be good to go. But I typically don't anchor up, so that doesn't get used very much. Also, inside the boat, I've got basically all the other stuff that I need for fishing. I got a waterproof box that's gonna have life jackets in it, and a throw lifesaver, and probably some water bottles and sunscreen and things like that. I've got the 2 bumpers that I put on the side of the boat when I'm going to be docking. I got a net, casting net, bait bucket. During fluke season, I'm going to have a cooler right here, which I'm going to fill with ice, and that's where the fluke go. If it's going to be striper season, I'm going to have a big coffin cooler over there, because clearly a 50-pound striper is not going to fit in there. And right now I got 2 tackle boxes. One's for fluking and one's for bluefish. I got another little gray box in there. That's where I keep fire extinguisher, safety stuff, license, registration, some tools, everything else that I would need to keep the boat in check. Got a nice seat, which is relatively comfortable. Not bad. Keeps me going. So let's talk about some repairs. When I first got this boat, the floor was beat, worse than it is now, believe it or not. And it certainly looked a lot better than this. What I did was I put down fiberglass cloth across the whole bottom of the boat and then covered it with epoxy resin, and it really made a nice strong floor. And then I used some Rust-Oleum topside paint and painted it over, and I don't necessarily know if I would recommend that, because as you can see, it doesn't last. I mean, I guess this is maybe a 1.5 or 2 years of using the boat, and you know, where I always stand, it's worn out. Where the coolers move around, it's worn out. We're definitely due to paint this thing again. The other thing that I had to repair was underneath the front of the boat. You know, right here, this was just cracked from fatigue. And you know, it's an old boat. It's a 1989, so this thing's taken a pounding every year, and eventually this area just started to crack. And I think it was sort of a manufacturer's defect. It was really thin. The fiberglass up here was really thin, so I went and I put 4 more layers of glass on it with fiberglass cloth, and even 5 or 6 layers in the keel area, and it's been holding up pretty good. I think it's pretty solid now. No leaks, no trouble that I'm aware of. I didn't do the world's greatest job sanding it down, but you know, this boat's kind of a beater anyway, so I didn't feel like I needed to make it look that good. Another thing that needs a little work is the fiberglass around the edges. I never got rub rails, and I'm having trouble finding them. I think I would like to put a rub rail around the edges, but haven't been able to find one at a reasonable price yet. So as it is, I got nothing, and as you can see, when I tie up to a dock or bump into a bridge or an abutment or something like that when I'm fishing, the sides get kind of banged up. And it's not a big deal. I can re-glass that and repaint it, but it's just not ready for that yet. The other thing, boat came with these rod holders. They're pretty good. I haven't had any complaints. They are surprisingly strong. I've had some real big fish run off and put, I don't know, maybe 20 pounds of pressure on there, and they haven't snapped off, surprisingly, so I've come to trust them. Same with these Berkeley rod holders. I've got one in the back, and then I've got one mounted on the side over here. Then I've even got one on my cooler. So they've also been really strong. I've had a couple strong fish run off and thinking that they would snap off, but they've held up really well too. Oh, one other thing. So this boat was built to have a long shaft outboard, and I didn't have a long shaft outboard. I had a short shaft outboard, so I actually notched out the back of the boat so that I could put a short shaft in. And you know, a long shaft and a short shaft are 2 inches different, so I notched out 2 inches off the back of the boat. And then I also reinforced it here with a piece of metal that's actually part of a street sign, I think a one-way sign, and I mounted that in. And I was a little bit nervous about doing that, but it seems to be working out okay. I haven't had any problems. The only thing I worry about a little is if a wave is coming over the back of the boat, a little bit more water might get in there, but honestly, it's been fine. So if you're thinking about doing that, I'm not gonna recommend it, but I wouldn't rule it out either. Like I said, I haven't had any problems. So as far as hardware goes, I've got some of these clips. It's real nice if you want to just clip on a bucket or something. I've got 2 in the front, and then I've got 2 in the back, and they're good for hooking bungee cords onto, and buckets, and bait buckets, and whatever else you have. And even if you have a life jacket that you're afraid is going to blow out of the boat, just hook it right on there, and you're good to go. The other thing that's unique about this boat is this platform in the front. It's just an aluminum platform that the guy that I bought the boat from made. He originally had a trolling motor on there. I didn't get the trolling motor with the boat, which is fine because I think I'd ruin it in the salt water anyway, but it's kind of nice. If I had my way, I think I'd rather have the platform up here, but this will do. Last thing is the lanyard or the leash. I always wear it. I think it's the law now that you have to, but I always feel more comfortable with it on. And I put an extension on it just so that I can get to the front of the boat without turning the engine off. It's real good to have. I recommend wearing it. If you're going 20 miles an hour and you make a sharp turn, it's pretty easy to get thrown off one of these boats. So my advice would be safe and wear it.